Dawn breaks over Maheshwar in a haze of marigold smoke and temple bells. In the sandstone court of petitions, Ahilyabai Holkar sits not upon a throne of spectacle, but upon a simple woolen mat, a deliberate, radical choice. Around her, the smell of ink, wet stone, and burning ghee hangs in the morning air. Farmers, merchants, widows, children, all may approach. All are heard. It is governance stripped to its sacred bone. Then a weaver pushes forward, his hands trembling, his face hollowed by sleepless terror. He places before the queen a single scrap of cloth, scorched at its edges, its indigo threads blackened and broken. The Pindari riders have been seen at the forest margin, he warns. Watching. Waiting. In Ahilyabai's dark eyes, something shifts. Not fear, but the cold, precise recognition that the storm she has long anticipated has finally found her door. The smoke reaches Maheshwar before the scout does. 3 dark pillars rise above the Narmada's far bank, coiling into the white monsoon sky like funeral pyres, because that is precisely what they are. Entire villages reduced to cinder and ash, their handlooms silent, their silk threads turned to nothing. When the rider finally collapses at the palace gate, his message confirms what Ahilyabai already knows in her bones. Ghazi Khan Barhot has drawn his line in blood and fire. She stands on the stone balcony, still as a temple idol, the river wind pressing her saffron robes against her frame, the smell of distant burning threading through the sacred jasmine garlands below. Those who watch her see no tears, no trembling. They see something far more dangerous. A queen deciding. In the rooms behind her, the knives are already being sharpened, though not all of them by friendly hands. In the airless hours before dawn, when the palace breathes only in shadows, Chief Minister Raghunath Rao Deshpande bends over a brass oil lamp in his private chamber. The flame gutters. His reed pen scratches against rough cotton paper. Each stroke deliberate, each word a small act of treason. Beyond the latticed window, the Narmada moves silently southward, indifferent to the ruin being composed in its name. He rolls the letter tight, seals it with anonymous wax, and presses no personal signet. A careful man, a dangerous man. But in the carved doorway, half swallowed by darkness, a young handmaiden named Savitri stands motionless, her breath held like a caught bird. She has seen enough. The conspirators believe themselves invisible. They are not. Somewhere deeper in the palace, a queen sleeps. But not for long. The oil lamp gutters as Savitribai kneels on the cold marble, her voice barely above the hiss of the Narmada beyond the palace walls. Ahilyabai receives the folded letter with steady hands, fingers that have signed death warrants and land grants with equal composure. She reads it once. The seal of her own treasury minister stares back at her, damning and unmistakable. No color rises in her face. No cup is dashed against stone. She folds the paper with the patience of a woman who has buried a husband, a son, and still governed a kingdom without flinching. A quiet word of thanks, and Savitribai is gone, dissolving back into the lampless corridors. In the silence that follows, the Queen of Malwa begins counting her enemies and deciding which hand to strike first. In the amber lamplight of the inner Zena, history bends quietly toward justice. Ahilyabai Holkar spreads no maps of armies, only a web of names, routes, and whispered loyalties. A silk merchant's wife from Maheshwar Ghat, a Devadasi who walks unmolested between rival camps, a blind priest whose ears miss nothing at the riverside shrines. One by one she places them like stones in a careful mosaic, each carrying a fragment of truth the warlord and the treacherous minister cannot see assembling. Incense curls through latticed screens. River water laps at the stone steps below. The women of the Narmada have always moved freely where soldiers cannot. And now that freedom becomes the queen's sharpest blade. The trap is set. Minister Bhavani Rao does not yet know that his next confidential letter is already being read. She rides out alone, or so it appears. The morning mist clings to the Sal forests like breath held in prayer. Ghazi Khan Barhot waits on horseback, scarred and contemptuous, a man who has reduced kingdoms to ash. Then Ahilyabai Holkar emerges from the tree line, silk-draped, unarmed, utterly unafraid, and behind her, almost imperceptibly, the jungle breathes iron. Bronze cannon barrels catch the pale light between the branches. Not a threat declared, a truth revealed. She places before him the weight of Malwa's grain routes, sustenance for 10,000 swords, and the cold arithmetic of annihilation as its alternative. No sword is drawn. No voice is raised. When Ghazi Khan finally bows his turbaned head, it is commerce that defeats him, not conquest. But back in Maheshwar, treachery has already chosen its hour. The monsoon clouds gather beyond the sandstone ramparts. But inside the great Durbar hall of Maheshwar, the air is absolutely still. Ahilyabai Holkar ascends her throne draped in white cotton, a widow's simplicity that carries the weight of 1,000 judgments. Before her, the minister Raghunath Rao stands stripped of his ceremonial sash. The incriminating scrolls, gathered thread by thread through months of whispered intelligence, spread open upon the marble floor like a wound exposed to light. She does not reach for the executioner's sentence. She reaches instead for something far more devastating: the record. Titles are revoked, lands returned to the treasury, and a life of exile pronounced with the measured calm of absolute conviction. The court exhales as one. Yet, as the disgraced minister is escorted beyond the silver gates, word arrives from the river. The Pindari warlord has crossed the Narmada. The rains have retreated. Along the scorched banks of the Narmada, something extraordinary stirs. Ahilyabai Holkar walks barefoot through the ash-gray ruins of the weaving villages, her white widow's sari catching the amber of the October light. She moves, without ceremony, touching charred timber, pressing silver coins into the calloused hands of weavers who have lost everything. New looms arrive on bullock carts, fragrant with fresh teak. The rhythmic clatter of shuttles begins again, tentative at first, then confident, then jubilant. Crimson and gold thread catches the morning sun. Children chase peacocks between freshly plastered walls. 7 years of tax relief, sealed in the Queen's own hand, circulate through the villages like scripture. Malwa breathes again. But in the marble corridors of Maheshwar, a letter has arrived, bearing the seal of a name Ahilyabai had hoped never to hear again. The lamps are lit before dawn. Ahilyabai moves through the half-finished colonnades alone, her bare feet finding the cold stone her architects have laid in her husband Khandarao's memory. Incense rises in slow spirals. Sandalwood, marigold ash, the ancient breath of grief made sacred. She has built temples across a continent, at Varanasi, Dwarka, Gaya, Somnath. Stones placed where sorrow could not be carried any further. Here, at Maheshwar, she builds for 3. A husband lost to cannon fire, a son surrendered to fever, a daughter-in-law who followed both into the dark. She touches the carved lotus above the threshold. No queen, no ruler, only a woman counting her dead. It is this grief, disciplined, transmuted, weaponized into devotion, that her enemies have fatally mistaken for weakness. They will not make that error much longer. Dawn breaks slow and amber over Maheshwar. The Narmada catches the first light like hammered gold, indifferent and eternal. Ahilyabai Holkar walks the sandstone terrace with measured, unhurried steps, her granddaughter's small hand folded inside her weathered palm. The scent of marigold and temple incense drifts up from the ghats below, where priests have already begun their morning oblations. She is 70 years old. Her back remains straight. She has outlasted conspirators, warlords, and monsoons without number. Weeks later, she slips from this world as quietly as a lamp extinguished in a windless room. No battlefield, no siege, only peace. Behind her, she leaves courts of justice, thriving weavers, and a river road paved in devotion. But the throne of Malwa does not mourn in silence for long.